The Holy Gospel continues in Luke 15. Jesus added, "A man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to their father, 'Give me the share of the estate that is coming to me.' So the father divided up the property between them. Some days later, the younger son gathered up his belongings and went off to a distant land. Here he squandered all his money on loose living. After everything was spent, a great famine broke out in the land, and the son was in great need. So he went to a landowner who sent him to a farm to take care of the pigs. The son, who was so hungry that he could have eaten the husks that were fodder for the pigs, but no one made a move to give him anything. Coming to his senses at last, he said, 'How many hired hands at my father's house have more than enough to eat while I am starving? I'll quit, and I'll go back home and say, I've sinned against God and against you. I no longer deserve to be called one of your children. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' With the younger son, the younger son set off for home. While still a long way off, the father caught sight of the returning child and was deeply moved. The father ran out to meet him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'I have sinned against God and against you. I no longer deserve to be called one of your children.' But his father said to one of the workers, 'Quick, bring out the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet. Take the calf that we have been fattening and butcher it. Let's eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and now he's found.' And the celebration began. Meanwhile, the older son had been out in the field, and as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the workers and asked what was happening. The worker answered, 'Your brother is home, and the fatted calf has been killed because your father has him safe and sound.' The son got angry at this and refused to go in to the party. But his father came out and pleaded with him. The older son replied, 'Look, for years now, I've done every single thing you've asked me to do. I never disobeyed even one of your orders, yet you never gave me so much as a kid goat to celebrate with my friends. But then this son of yours comes home after going through your money with prostitutes, and you kill the fatted calf for him.' 'But my child,' the father said, 'you're with me always, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and rejoice. This brother of yours was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, and now he is found.' The gospel of Christ." Please be seated. They say, whoever they are, they say that you can't go home again. You can't go back to the place you once called home because in your absence, that place will have changed. I remember traveling across the world and needing desperately to return home. I'd been traveling for several months, and I intended to stay away for many more months. I was in England when the doctors informed me that there was a tumor lodged between 2 of the bones in my foot that needed to be removed immediately. I can still remember the doctor telling me that there was a distinct possibility that the tumor was a malignant sarcoma, a cancer. Suddenly, home seemed like the only place in the world that I wanted to be. And even though I was already in the city of my birth, I knew without a doubt that Birmingham was not my home. The only trouble was that during my travels, my parents had moved to another town. Maybe they were trying to tell me something, I don't know. Even though the place where my family was now living was familiar to me, it was not the home which I had left behind. So when I arrived at my parents' new home, everything felt very different. Perhaps the most important change was not in the location of the home, but rather in me. I was changed. I was not the starry-eyed young woman that I once was. The future was suddenly very uncertain. Fears that I had never, ever had to deal with were suddenly part of who I had become. But I was home. And even though home was the last place that I expected to be, home was the only place that I wanted to be. So I set about trying to feel at home in what was, for all intents and purposes, a very different home than the one I had hoped to come home to. When I think about Jesus' parable of the lost on this homecoming Sunday, I can't help wondering how many of us here at Holy Cross feel like we have come home to a different church. Now, I know that many of us haven't really been away, but bear with me for a moment so that we can explore the contours of this metaphor of coming home. All of us carry with us all sorts of images of what we want and need the church to be. Some of us long to return to an image of the church as it was at a particular time in our lives when we felt at home in the church. Some of us long to come home to a church that was full of particular people, or a church that sang certain songs, or worshiped in certain ways, or comforted us with particular ideas, or inspired us with certain hopes. Others of us long to come home to the church of our dreams, a church that never really was, but a church that we are convinced we would feel at home in. You know the kind of church home I'm talking about, a place that's full of people who are exceptional, a place filled with inspirational activities, a church that accomplishes stuff, important stuff, vital stuff, a church that has absolutely no financial worries whatsoever. There's this old gospel song that kept coming into my mind as I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to sing it for you. I'll spare you that, but it goes something like, there's a church in the valley by the wildwood. Some of you are nodding. No lovelier spot in the dale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. In my mind, it's a little white church. A little white wooden church out on the West Coast. Whatever the contours of the church of your longing, I suspect the most important ingredients that make up the church of your longing revolve around people. A church is not a church without people, and one thing I've learned about people is that people are very, very complex, complicated. There's all kinds of people with all kinds of needs and all kinds of skills and all kinds of talents. And just when you think you've figured out an individual, they change. Take that lost child, the one who is known as the prodigal. No matter how you look at this parable, one thing is clear. The child that returned to his home was not the same child who left home. Think about the other lost child, the one who can't seem to share his father's enthusiasm or joy at his brother's return. That lost child is not the same person as the one who went out into the fields in the morning, The child who thought his future was secure, that lost child is no longer the same as the person he was just that very morning. He is now someone else who has returned to find his dad throwing a lavish party for his wastrel of a brother whom he believed he'd never have to contend with again. Both lost children have changed. And then there's the dad, who certainly isn't the same person that he was before his youngest child left him far behind. All that longing, all that worry. He's not even the same person that his older child left that very morning, because now his son has returned to him. Nothing stays the same. We are all changing all the time. Is it any wonder that it's so very easy for us to get lost? Looking in on this parable, I can see myself in each of these three lost souls. I've certainly messed up in ways that make me want to tell the younger child, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I've also lost people for all sorts of reasons that have left me miserably longing for their return. So I can see exactly why the lost father, who's, let's face it, played a pivotal role in both of his children's angst, I can see why this lost father is so very at sea, lost in a myriad of change. I mean, his child would never have left if he hadn't acted the way he did. And as for his older child, well, how could the father forget about him? Why didn't he even bother to invite his eldest child to the party? He could have called out to him in the fields. We've all messed up in our dealings with people, messed up to the degree that has caused us to lose them. We can all relate to the kind of longing for the lost that would cause us to throw a party if they were to return. And then there's the eldest lost child. How often have we played the responsible role only to discover some irresponsible so-and-so being praised for doing what you've been doing all along without any praise? Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. No wonder we get lost. Wouldn't it be nice to just go home to the place of our dreams, the place where we can really feel at home? Oh, give me a home where everyone behaves exactly the way that I need them to behave so that I can feel at home. It's all about me. I don't think so. As nice as such a place may seem, it's not a place where any of us would be content to call home for very long. At the end of this parable of the lost, there's a party going on. And the best thing that I know about parties is that the best parties are unpredictable. There's nothing worse than a party where you know exactly what's going to happen next and where nothing much happens. We've all been to those kinds of parties. Most of us try our best to avoid them. A party where nothing out of the ordinary happens isn't really a party at all. That's a meeting. A real party, is unpredictable because parties, real parties, are places where people let their hair down, their walls down, their defenses down. And when people do that, we catch glimpses of who they are. People are always changing, and discovering the changes in people is what life is all about. Being lost is a great adventure. I have seen more great places on this planet as a result of being lost than I've ever seen following a map. Carol will tell you that. I'm always lost. Always lost. Being lost is an adventure. An adventure that is served best when we get lost in the company of people who are willing to help us find ways of being in the world that create homes for us all. People who are willing to create homes, knowing all the while that even homes change. This place right here, right now, this is not the church that we long for, but it is a church in which we can create together a home that will provide sanctuary as we engage in this grand adventure of life here and now, in this place, in this time. So let me welcome you home. Things have changed. Things are changing. So let's do what people do in the midst of change. Let's have a party. Let's break some bread, pour some wine, and let's celebrate coming home. We've all changed. We are all changing. We can celebrate what once was, shed a tear for all that we have lost, embrace what is, look forward to what is to come. Remember who we are and whose we are as we find ourselves, and give thanks to the one who is now and evermore shall be, the love in whom we live and move and have our being. Welcome home to the love that is God.